So, English session, like everything else today. So, AI and sustainability, and everyone's been on the keynotes, have heard about production and consummation, usage of power. Power is a very important aspect in this new revolutionary world of AI and everything that we need to more people coming, nice. There was actually going to be more than 3 then, because it was 3 here for 20 minutes. Always nice. So we're going to talk about sustainability around AI workloads or similar dependent workloads to AI, I would say. And with me today is Regina and Claes from the data center side, so Equinix and GleSYS. So we have a big one and not so big one. Not small, but not so big one. So my name is Pallinder. I'm the pre-sales manager here at Arrow ECS in Sweden. And I'm also running the EMEA AI Lab offering, which is one of the questions we'll talk about today is something we are trying to discover the truth about. Along a lot of other things, but it's not relevant for this session. So please introduce yourselves.
Claes Hohner, Head of Sales at GleSYS, Internet infrastructure in general, but more specifically data centers in the Nordics, meaning Sweden and Finland in our case. Currently building out AI-ready data center capacity.
And Regina Dahlström, Managing Director of Equinix in the Nordics, also building out infrastructure in the Nordics and supporting our colleagues worldwide as one, if not the largest data center company in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So the difficulties with all kind of discussions that I'm trying to moderate today is where to start. And we actually come to the conclusion that shame is a good word. So let's do a subsection of shame and start with the TikTok shame.
Yeah,
Claes.
I think I need to build up with that using some numbers. If you look at power consumption of data centers globally, if you were paying attention to Matt Watts from NetApp this morning, he let us know that in 2020 it was about 2% of energy consumption globally. Currently we estimate it at roughly 4% and heading sharply upwards towards 8% in 2030. So currently, footprint from data centers globally, it's as much as aviation. And people have a shame of flying, like flygskam in Swedish. I'm sure all Swedish people have heard the term. But there's no sense of TikTok shame or YouTube shame, even though the footprint is the same.
Or actually twice.
Yeah, or
the amount.
At least sharply rising.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there is a big however, because we can limit our means of transportation by flying. We can use digital services. But the option of not building data center or digital infrastructure is actually, the truth is that someone else will build it. So another part of this dialogue would be that if we adhere to the shame, and I share it, then we would possibly, specifically in the Nordics, become exports of energy to countries that will build, that have less of shame embedded in them. And instead of having the consumption in the data center close to where power is generated, renewable as well in the Nordics, we will export our green energy to countries far away from us and just make it even worse in terms of efficiency. So this is a dilemma of the industry, but there is definitely a however to the shame concept. That's on top of both of our minds.
Yeah, indeed. And when it comes to footprint from AI or data centers in general, it's like any good realtor will tell you. It's location, 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 right? It very much depends on where in the world you have your workloads placed. Just within Europe, there's at least a 10-fold difference in carbon footprints between continental Europe, where there's still a lot of burning of coals going on. Whereas here in the north, it's roughly 1/10 of what you would find down in Germany or the Netherlands or Poland.
And it's a part of the industry that has shifted in short time, I would say, also by limitations around in Europe. I mean, I think within the industry we know that Ireland, but also the Netherlands are facing strict limitations, which has completely reshaped the landscape of the question of power accessibility, but also green power, and staying true to preferring and seeking renewable power instead of any power available in Europe. But I do think Sweden, not only as the industry, but Sweden as a country, needs to face what role we are aiming for, becoming a host in a larger sense for Europe in terms of AI load, or just making sure that we can at least serve Sweden and the Nordics, and still, to me, continuing then to export the gold, which is renewable energy in the future.
So the data centers you're running today and the data centers you're looking into building in the future, or is there any difference now with these AI workloads that you're looking into how to design the new data centers? You know, yeah.
Leading
Open
question. No, there's no difference. Yes, there's difference in all of the components. The amount of space per load, cooling innovation. On top of my mind right now is the deployment of liquid cooling throughout our footprint in the Nordics, but throughout actually, and continuing to innovate. I think one needs to stay a bit humble to the fact that we haven't seen the full load of AI yet. So I am sure that our infrastructure will be additionally stressed. There will be more things than liquid cooling and high computer data centers in front of us. But for sure, we're thinking in very different terms to prepare ourselves and the infrastructure for what's to come.
So when we had Facebook in, it's obviously Luleå, right?
Yes.
One of the reasons they were, at least what they told us, was the possibility for free cooling, right? So we didn't need any, it was cold enough, right? And it was an unlimited amount of, I would say, energy availability with a high trust of it actually being delivered also, which is what's very unique with Sweden, or I would say the Nordics at least. So Sweden, Norway, at least, Finland now also, that we can depend on the power actually being delivered. So we have a very good way of delivering the base load, right? So, but just staying on the cooling side, you have a specific part of your company around cooling. Could you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, indeed. But just to put it into context, and Luleå, for instance, there's very good reason to go north with your data centers. Because not only is power generally cheaper and cleaner in the Nordics, you also get secondary effects, needing less overhead for cooling the cooler it is. But that's not the end of it. There's also the possibility to actually do something with this residual heat. If you've ever been inside the hot aisles of a data center, you know that there's a lot of heat generated. All of the energy going in becomes heat, of course. That's just a fact of nature we cannot get away from. And instead of just venting it out, literally, as the Swedish expression says, making a fire for the birds or the crows, you can actually put that heat to use, which is what we have been pioneering. Here in Västberga, where we have our Stockholm site, we have been heating 1,000 apartments with waste heat from the data center since 2017. So even at our relatively small scale of operating data centers, it makes a huge difference. The one we have in Stockholm is just above 1 megawatt currently. So compared to some of your data center sites, it's relatively small.
Humble.
Humble.
Yes, and that is the dilemma of, like Claes said, it's about location, and going north has a couple of advantages, but reheating, for example, Helsinki stands out, where you can get higher amounts of power available and committed closer to the actual urban density of Helsinki, whereas in Stockholm this is getting trickier and trickier. So I think you're right about looking at the Nordics as one gold mine, but I think even within the Nordics right now, there's competition ongoing in how power is committed to the industry and what solutions that are available to do reheating and
So that's the
etc.
district heating thing that's very unique for Finland, right?
Correct.
So they, well,
And Sweden.
yeah, but as a whole,
Yes.
or as a system approach, right?
Yes.
So they really like to have everything that burns something or creates heat. Even nuclear is burning, or maybe burning birds if you have one now, whatever. To get the residuals, the residual heat away, and
Claes is
using
right,
that
that's
as a
one-
positive thing.
Claes is right. That's not completely unique. I think what's unique is that we can get higher amount of available power commitments closer to the Helsinki area than what you can close to and at larger scale. Not trying to stay out of size, but if you're
Yeah.
looking at mega campuses for AI, we will need power commitments that you have to go to Luleå or the vicinity of to get in Sweden. Whereas Finland stands out not only in reheating possibility, but they stand out in still being able to commit to provide power volumes closer to the cities than we currently do.
Do we know why?
Transport networks.
Okay.
Again, something we didn't talk much about a couple of years ago, right?
No.
Specifically not in digitalization.
No.
But this has now become a key component in planning AI infrastructure throughout the world.
And indeed, that combination that you see in Helsinki is probably unbeatable.
Yes.
Both having availability of large amounts of power from the grid
Yep.
and also consumers of residual heat. That's like the perfect.
Stockholm needs to step up. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it really does make a difference. From a system perspective, if we disregard whose climate books or where the numbers end up, from a system perspective, we see that we become easily net negative by doing this heat recovery. It brings the footprint from worst case in Europe, 400 to 800 grams per kilowatt hour, down to at least minus 57, 60 grams, with a relative conservative estimation on our side. So it does make a difference.
Have you had any? I mean, there's different new technologies coming to offset CO2. We're talking carbon capture. That's the word, carbon capture. Because you mentioned minus 50, 60, grams in this case. But then you see the whole cycle, including instead of burning for residual or central heating systems, so it's about how you count here, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So.
And that's why I wanted to be very transparent about
Yes.
that, because it's not like we're capturing carbon and actually bringing it out of the air and into the ground.
So instead of doing something else,
yes,
you're gonna
it's about offsetting other sources in the district heating grid. For instance, our West Coast data center in the town of Falkenberg is roughly 3 times the size of the one we have here in Stockholm. And once we've filled that to capacity, the municipality of Falkenberg will stop with the burning of pellets altogether. Because our data center, together with the Carlsberg brewery that also do heat recovery, will. Yes. and beer. That's probably a byproduct of the heat recovery, or the other way around, but yes.
Priorities.
The town of Falkenberg will be heated by the cloud and beer.
Yeah.
So,
And the residuals
What a
from
great
beer.
summary.
Okay. Get away from beer.
But I think this confusion of numbers and KPIs is, I think we're peaking in that environment of where it's very hard for an enterprise CIO or an enterprise customer to actually understand what to look for. There's been KPIs like PUE and standard data center efficiency KPIs, but you can twist and turn them,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So
indeed.
right now I'd say it's quite difficult to be buying sustainable without getting into the academia of this discussion you just had. And that needs to change.
Yeah.
It needs to be, it is transparent, but it's difficult to read a one-pager and get what am I buying, what am I looking at.
yeah.
So I mean, you can have really low PUEs, but you could also have good numbers and an empty data hall, which you can twist and tweak this. And I think that we need to change the industry logic of looking for sustainable measures, in my mind.
I agree. We need better metrics.
Yes.
We've been doing with PUE for such a long time, and it just doesn't cut it in this day and age.
No, I mean, I'm a big fan of, and I know that the analogy doesn't hold internationally, but I'm a big fan of the Bamse analogy, which stems from if you're big and strong, you need to be nice to the world.
Yeah.
And I would like to find a KPI or a metric where what
Bamse
we...
index.
A Bamse index, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. where we, who actually are the big consumers of power, invest back in the societies that we have our footprint in, which we currently do with PPAs. That's one vehicle or one tool to do so. But I think coming back to the dilemma we had of Stockholm, which is dear to my heart, because I'd like to see Stockholm maintaining its status as a Silicon Valley of North Europe. But we need to take infrastructure more seriously, and we need to gather around that. And there are definitely forces that would like to invest. We do, and we'd like to invest more if that would be a discussion climate, and if that would also, of course, benefit business.
So, that sentence,
Yes.
I think it was your fault that it's there. I think that we could
That's
expand
my
a little.
quote.
Yeah, AI is not the evil one, or
No.
should be, or could be, or where are we in that one?
Exactly. No, I think AI, which is provoking something that already existed. The power scare around the world comes from outdated investment plans, unawareness, taking something for granted, not understanding the weight of digitalization and fiber build-outs, etc., etc. AI is not to blame in my mind, but it is provoking and it's scaring a lot of people. We need, I know that there's numbers of translating NVIDIA equipment to power consumption, and then it goes crazy. Instead, I'd like to gather around what kind of investments should our industry be a part of to solve the problem and to solve the dilemma in a sustainable manner, and how do we give benefits to those who are Bamse in this ecosystem. I'll stop the analysis.
Any comment on that one, Claes? What do you see?
No, we see the same thing, that even at our scale, to be able to invest somewhere, we need to know that we can secure a steady stream of clean power for the next couple of decades. I mean, data centers are big, heavy objects. You don't move them around once you've built them. So we share that.
So, Claes, we also, when we were talking about what to say on this one, buildings, the climate footprint of buildings was something was close to your heart then. Is it still?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, we are passionate about the overall sustainability of it. But the AI, let's say the move to AI or the AI boom has indirectly helped us lower the total footprint of the data centers, because we build ours out of concrete, which obviously has a footprint in and of its own. But with the huge increase in power density we're seeing with AI workloads and NVIDIA equipment in particular, we will be able to cram 3-4 times as much power into the same building before we need a new one, which reduces those, let's call them secondary carbon footprint sources of the building and everything else, because we can actually do more with the same data center when we move to liquid cooling, or even just with higher density air cooling.
Is there any official KPIs around calculating CO2 emissions in buildings when you're building the data center? Let's say a total kind of climate footprint KPIs? Does it exist?
Not specifically what I know for the data center industry, but
would that make sense?
Yes, and going back to AI is not an evil, but maybe a trigger of innovation. I met with the Nordic building construction company Skanska the other day, and they're getting along and realizing that there's something here in the ecosystem for players like them as well. I'd like to see someone like them being a bit patriotic of them being from our neighborhood to innovate around this. But then you're down to, which is out of my comfort zone, of concrete types and production of concrete, and that's where they started to educate me, which has a footprint of its own, obviously. But if we got a data center innovation business line with someone like Skanska, again, the Nordics would excel in innovation. We're green.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yes,
Okay.
totally.
Good. I'm going to circle back to something I wrote that we already mentioned that as Stockholm. You know, the region, the city needs to be more taking care of their own survival and things like that. But there's I wrote something down. It is strategic where you place your DCs, right?
Yes.
For multiple. So we mentioned, I think, 2 or 3 of them. I'm pretty sure there are more than that. I mean, the availability for waste, you know, taking care of the waste in this kind of, the cooling, the availability of power. But how about people? How about skills? I mean, do you see anything? The data centers, more or less, when it coming to after it's been built, but you have a lot of builders, and you know. But after that, it's not that labor intensive, right?
I think the establishment of the hyperscaler you mentioned in Luleå has almost created a myth in Sweden, at least in parts of the industry, of being very, very low on labor intensity. And I mean, we who operate data centers know it's not labor intensive, but it comes with, and it's a tedious word, but it comes with an ecosystem. Right now, I know that the spot that Meta has in Luleå has grown. It's grown above and beyond what they need to operate the actual data center. And I think we need to look at it like that. Will this ever be green steel or Northvolt in terms of labor? No. But I'm not sure that's what the municipalities are looking for either. I think we're looking for something that is long-term, sustainable and predictable to keep on educating a workforce that has a reason to work remote or in the data center. So we have a bit of an industry reputation in my mind to turn around.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, in some public sources, it was almost when that particular data center was established.
500,
yeah.
1500.
Yeah, or we will get a
it
new...
cost 50, right?
Yes.
Something.
Exactly. It was sold as we will get a new Silicon Valley in the north. And that's,
yes.
yeah. That's not actually what happens if you build a data center, because you need a few skilled technicians to take care of the hardware, but it's not labor intensive, as Regina says.
True. I still think that there's, again, yet another component of that, why it's strategic. It actually comes back to resilience as a country.
Yeah.
If we have our data, and it's hard not to become geopolitical, but you almost have to. Yeah. If we don't have our own data in our own country to a large extent, it's actually a risk for our democracy. I mean, it sounds very high fly to say that I work with democracy, but in a way I actually think that I do. Because building infrastructure for maintaining data within our country borders is a part of maintaining democracy.
So it's like a base function for society.
Yes,
Yep.
And we need to start to consider it to be so.
Yeah, for sure. Data sovereignty contributes to democracy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So bounce TikTok shame and democracy in a nutshell.
So I have a question. When we're talking small and big data center, when does a small data center be a mid-size, or how do you, is it megawatts in, or it's density, or how do you do, oh, I'm building a big one. What is a big one? How do you measure that?
Yeah, I would argue that our data centers that are in the single-digit megawatt scale are, from a global perspective, mid-sized data centers, or even on the smaller end of that. And then you have the behemoths and your typical sites, I think, somewhere in between, right?
I think it's ever evolving, it's changing. Right now, I would have to say, because it will change again a quarter from now, but right now, I think on size, I would say yes, an enterprise data center of single digit. I think a typical enterprise data center that we would establish now, somewhere between 20 and 40 megawatts, and a big one, well, beyond 3 digits. Seriously?
Yeah.
But then it's a cloud anchor kind of a customer.
Yeah, hyperscaler more.
Or the hyperscalers to come.
Yeah.
Yes, whatever we will call them.
Yeah, or the ones using up all of Ohio's power.
Exactly. All the 90 data centers just in Ohio. Just to end with one question, and that is, we've kind of been there, like everything we're talking about, and kind of tangent to everything else. It's production close to consumption. What is the strategy for your companies? Starting with you.
We're looking at how to benefit from the Nordic advantages right now, and how we can invest even more going forward, but staying very close to the political landscape of what we just mentioned, in the variations between Sweden, Finland, Norway and Denmark, meaning that we're looking a lot to Finland, but I hope to continue to build big in Sweden with the dilemmas that we've mentioned throughout. But I think to answer simpler, what we're doing right now is to build as bold as we can to take as much market share as we possibly can of digital infrastructure.
Yeah, and to keep it political, in our case, it's about getting heavy workloads to move north in general.
Go north.
Yeah, just
go west. No, go north.
Just go north.
Yeah.
And while you're at it, try and find somewhere that makes something out of the heat, like local warming instead of global warming. If you will.
Don't eld for the cloaks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that one.
And also, in Europe, we have a really poor history of placing our heavy compute workloads in the most carbon-intense regions, like Frankfurt or Amsterdam or Ireland,
Yep.
Yeah.
which for a lot of reasons you need to be there. For a lot of applications you need to be...
Needed anyway.
Needed, yeah, indeed. You need it to be close to your eyeballs. But our data center is 15 milliseconds round trip from Frankfurt.
Yes.
And by most standards, that's not a lot of time.
Agree?
No.
So let's not put everything in Frankfurt.
Good ending word.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.